Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I'm going to call the July 10th Select Board meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. We will accept the agenda with one additional announcement. On to announcements. This Select Board meeting is being audio and video recorded, and then I'll invite Drew Patno to come up and make an announcement.
Hi, Drew Patno, Director of Public Works. Just wanted to announce that this Saturday, July 13th, we have our third household hazardous waste event at the DPW from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's at the DPW itself, not the solid waste facility. The website does outline what we do and don't take. Figured it might be worth mentioning. We do not take fireworks. So if you have household hazardous waste, we hope to see you there Saturday. Thanks.
Okay, that would be a surprise to me if someone came with those. Anyway, announcement number 2, the ongoing advocacy on behalf of Nantucket regarding the Atlantic right whale speed restrictions for the ferries is continuing. A group of us had a meeting with staff from Senator Markey's office this week, and we are continuing to encourage everyone in the community to send letters to both Senators Warren and Markey and Representative Keating to tell them exactly what a 30% reduction in steamship service and potential elimination of fast ferry service for half the year, how that might impact your life, the life of people you care about, and the community at large. Please send those stories along. We want to inundate them and make the request for an exemption for Nantucket Sound from the proposed regulations. Public comment, yeah. Okay. 2024 committee vacancies, round 2. We have openings on the Capital Program Committee, the Council for Human Services, the Council on Aging, the Cultural Council, the Nantucket Historical Commission, the Real Estate Assessment Committee, and the Town of Nantucket Scholarship Committee. I want to encourage folks to take the leap, fill out their applications. The deadline is July 26th at noon, and then we will go through our process of reviewing applications. They'll be posted in the packet. You'll have an opportunity to come speak to this board about why you want to serve. And there are always great opportunities to participate in town government, and your voice matters, and this is one way for you to get regular input into how the town operates in various ways, so please consider applying. The Nantucket Civic League Annual Forum will be held on Monday, July 15th at 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the Nantucket Atheneum. Public is encouraged to come. The board will be there. Each of us will be speaking out about our areas on the strategic plan that we're responsible for and taking questions from the public. So please join us. Any other select board announcements or comments? Seeing none, we will move on to follow up on comments from prior select board meetings, and I'm going to turn this over to Florencia, who's going to give us a demonstration on how accessing agendas and minutes is done on the website so that folks can see how easy it is to keep track of what's going on.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you, Brooke. So if it's okay, I'm just going to share my screen. I always feel that it's easier to explain the website when people are looking at it. So for those that are not familiar, nantucket-ma.gov is our website. Our agendas and minutes and calendars for events and activities can be found simply by going under Government, Calendar, just open a separate tab there, or just on the homepage, Agendas and Minutes. And if you are looking to find agendas and minutes from for particular select board, commission, or committee, you will simply go to select category. Here you have all the boards and commissions we have at the moment. Instead of going through a list, you can simply unclick, click the one that you want to find. Let's say Airport Commission, and you will just click on the loop here, and you have all the agendas for the Airport Commission from the most recent agenda. Then it goes down to other years. If you're curious, here you can find minutes. So those are the ways that you can search for agendas. Another way is also by going to boards, commissions, and committees, where you can find, like you just mentioned, open positions in different boards and commissions, but also a page dedicated to each board, commission, trust, work group, or committee that we have at the town of Nantucket. So you can just simply go to the board commission that you're interested in, click on it, and agendas and minutes, most recent agenda, or all the agendas goes back to this page that I just mentioned. So there are a couple different ways of finding agendas and minutes, but they should all be very accessible through the home page. If people have questions, they can always email us at communications@nantucket-ma.gov, or just do a search. The search function, we have a very big website with a lot of information, a lot of PDFs and whatnot, but it's also worth trying to find information by using the search bar. And
Florencia?
Yes.
Can you go to the select board page real quick for the agendas and minutes? I just wanted to point one thing out that I've started doing. Oh, you just passed it.
There we go. What I find here to do,
I wonder why it's not showing it. I've started next to all the, oh, that's the complete census. Just so everybody knows, on the select board now, there is a media column. And for all of our regular Wednesday meetings or any meeting that we have a Zoom webinar, I've been putting a link directly to the video. So it's really easy for people to just find that video and they can watch it right from there too.
sorry, my connection is clearly working very slow today, but
And if I might add, again, I've mentioned this before, but all of the YouTube videos are bookmarked by agenda item. So as you go to the YouTube page and the description of the meeting, you click the More button and the agenda drops down and you can click on the agenda item and it will take you to the exact place in the video where the discussion of that agenda item begins. So super convenient there.
not going to open YouTube now because it will take a second, but Nantucket Government TV is it's our YouTube channel. On places, like you mentioned, you have all the commissions, boards, and committees, meetings. Right. So, yeah, but if anyone has any questions, they can always email communications, and that's how you find an agenda or minutes for our different commissions and boards.
And I'm going to add one more hack, Florencia, that I found. If you go to that agendas page and unselect them and then select the boards and commissions you're interested in and do the search and then bookmark that search, you don't have to go through the process of selecting them every time. I bookmark it, and then when I open that bookmark, it pulls up just the boards and committees that I have had selected in that search. So it's a quick way to get back to the ones that are of most interest to you.
All right, and then
thanks,
we'll find the thing right here. Yeah, you're welcome anytime.
Okay, thanks so much. Okay, now is the opportunity for public comment. A reminder that public comment is limited to 3 minutes for items not on the agenda. And I have someone in the room, so.
Thanks, sorry, I thought that meant it was on the agenda. I didn't mean to interrupt.
You know, your question was a good one. It was an announcement, so it wasn't an agenda item.
Got it.
So little distinction without a difference.
Okay, thank you. I'm Amy DeCibio. I'm a summer resident. I live at 4 Massaquoi Avenue, and I'm talking really on behalf of Act for Wales. I just wanted to address the speed limit issue. I think one thing that the community could use when they write their letters is that there hasn't been a whale sighting in Nantucket Sound in decades. And what I believe that NOAA's push for this speed limit is a bit disingenuous when, in fact, they are building a power plant right in the location where that endangered species, the North Atlantic right whale, lives, hunts, breeds. There are fewer than 350 species left, and yet we're building offshore wind power plants really right on Nantucket Shoals, right in that location. So I think it would behoove the public and the folks trying to put these rules through to mention that it doesn't really line up. And so anyway, just really wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to, Megan?
Good evening. I just have a quick question. My name is Barbara Burgo, and I am currently a resident of Brewster. I'm a friend of Jim Barrows, and I'm actually here regarding the Article 6 of 2024 town meeting appropriation of an independent African meeting house vandalism. Could I speak at that time?
Yes.
Or do I have to?
Yes, I will take comment. That is an item on the agenda. So,
Excellent.
Yep. Thanks
you.
for asking. Okay.
Hi there, Megan Perry for the record. I just wanted to quickly bring up the traffic in the new downtown area. I know it's summertime. I know we say there's lots of traffic all the time because it's summer. But in thinking forward, if that's going to be the new downtown, if we could keep that in mind for planning purposes. The other day I was trying to drive home and I heard an ambulance coming. There was nowhere for anybody to pull over for that ambulance to get through. So it was a little bit concerning, had that been your grandchild in the ambulance that needed immediate care or whatnot, it would have taken a little bit longer for them to get there. So as we're thinking of planning for the new downtown, just take traffic into consideration because it is clearly a problem every year. And then my next question is for the select board members. I know you guys don't answer, but maybe you will. Can any member tell me what the purpose of a bluff is, or what plant is wetland indicative? Or what is wetland delineation? I'm thinking the answer is probably no. However, the last two highly skilled and educated chairs of the Conservation Commission who you ousted could answer that question right off the top of their head. I'm guessing now the Concom chair seat has become the new ejection button for the select board to push in favor of somebody who might not have any experience in the subject matter. I was advised by the last Affordable Housing Trust meeting that if I had an issue with somebody's behavior in this community who sits on a town board, that I should come directly to that person. So that's what I'm doing. I'd like to go to comments that were made in the local media regarding the Concom appointments. And I quote from the Current, "I weigh everything," Moore said. "For me, decorum is a very serious element of how I decide." I found this weird because this came from somebody who broke the open meeting law to get something accomplished while sitting on the select board and the Affordable Housing Trust. From the Inky, but really it is the role he fell into, being the chair, and his conduct at a lot of the meetings and directly to staff members who really can't necessarily speak up. Again, ironic that came from Don Holgate, who was also a member of the select board and on PDC and also broke the open meeting law. So I'm curious, is breaking the law the type of decorum and conduct that we're looking for? Or is this what the BPF president meant in his email to the town manager, where he said new funding was contingent on a more balanced Concom as promised? I think this board could use a little self-reflection before speaking or acting in the future. I think you have the power to appoint some people, and appointing people who have education in the subject matter is important. So those are kind of my comments, and I came bearing some gifts for you guys. Yes. Also, the purpose of a bluff is to erode and feed the ocean down below, if you were wondering. So, thank you.
Thanks, Megan. Okay. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, we have no new business. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes, warrants, treasury warrants, and pending contracts. Any questions from the board or a motion?
Move to approve.
I can't hog it.
Excuse me, I would prefer to do that after the meeting, Megan. Thank you. It's great theater, but no. Okay, next on the agenda. Do I have a motion on minutes, payroll
Motion.
warrants?
To approve.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor by roll call?
1 through 4.
Yep. By roll call vote, since Malcolm's online. Don?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Malcolm? And the chair votes aye. Malcolm, I didn't hear you. I saw you.
Aye.
There we go. Thank you.
Just a comment on the contracts. The jetties was in $100 and something thousand to fix a building down at the jetties, and I'm really happy to see that. Every time I go down the winter and the windows are broken and opened and things are left, I think, geez, it would be better to take care of that and before it gets worse. So I'm glad to see that we are doing that. Thank you.
Next up is the Finance Department request for approval of fiscal year 2024 year-end budget transfers. Mr. Turbot?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Erica. Okay, so the first one is general fund transfers. We're proposing transferring $611,000 from the general insurance, building insurance line, as well as auto insurance. Those came in slightly lower than we had expected, and with the chargebacks, we did have some available funds, and we had some accounts that needed it. We're proposing transferring $10,000 to public facilities operating budget, essentially some changes in the cleaning contract and increased utilization in utilities has necessitated asking for this $10,000 transfer at year end. Fire operating $85,000. With all of the new recruits at academy training and academy costs have put this in a deficit, which we need to close by the year end. Then we have Finance Committee operations. As I explained to them last night, this is not actually anything the Finance Committee did. This is where the majority of the warrant is paid from, and so we do need to transfer to close that gap. Town clerk, town meeting costs an additional $70,000. As everybody knows, with the option tech and the sound company and the additional cost for an additional night, it does cost money to do all of those things. So the town clerk does need $70,000 to cover the additional cost for the town meeting. And debt service, short-term interest, this really is mainly because we ended up selling the debt after the budget had been finalized for fiscal '24. Otherwise, we wouldn't have run into this, and it did come in slightly higher than we had anticipated. So we're asking for a little over $437,000 there, all totaling in the general fund $611,130. I would note for any new members and members of the audience, Mass General Law does allow us to make budgetary transfers between May 1st to July 15th of each fiscal year, provided that the Select Board and the FinCom both concur with our request. For the Select Board's edification, last night, the Finance Committee met and did approve the transfers that we're presenting to you tonight. We should do them one at a time, just in case anything ever, they decided they didn't want to do some of them.
Any questions from the board on this or a motion?
Motion to approve the 2024 year-end budget transfers.
Second.
Okay, by roll call, Tom?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay.
Thank you. So the second sheet is enterprise funds. The first is we're proposing transferring $550,000 to solid waste professional services, made up of $450,000 from DPW salaries. This is the accumulation of unfilled positions or timing of filling positions in DPW. That's why we have that available funds to be able to transfer into the solid waste budget, as well as from the solid waste enterprise fund salary line itself. We are fully staffed in solid waste with the budgeted positions, but due to the timing of filling those positions, it did leave some surplus money, and the operating budget, which is where freight costs and all the other operating pieces are contained, did end up needing $550,000 here. we did do a reserve fund transfer last night as well for $340,000. The increased utilization at the transfer station also comes with substantial increased transportation and disposal cost off island for Nurnick and things of that nature as well. There was some additional costs with the help of not only legal counsel, but George Aronson, the consultant, in preparing the RFP for the upcoming new contract. So we're asking for a transfer into solid waste of $550,000. Then Ireland Home Operating, we did a large transfer at town meeting from their salary line into operating with the expectation that we're going to be utilizing a lot more travel nurses during the remainder of the fiscal year. Ultimately, there was a little bit of a difficulty getting travel nurses and other travel staff, so we ended up having to utilize internal staff with overtime. So we're asking to transfer $170,000 back into Island Home for a total transfer into the enterprise funds of $720,000. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions or a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second?
Okay, by roll call, Matt?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Dawn?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next up is town manager's report, and Libby's she's online, and she's gonna introduce these two items.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm not going to put my camera on because I'm having unstable internet connection right now. So first off, we've got a monthly departmental report from IT. This is another in the series of departmental reports, updates that we've been providing to you. And we've done several so far. Now we've got IT. Mike Alvarez, our Chief Technology Officer, is going to take you through it. Mike?
Hi, good evening. Mike Alvarez, Chief Technology Officer. Just a brief introduction. I've been your Chief Technology Officer now for just a little over a year. I'm going to try to get through this pretty quickly, but feel free to stop me, interrupt me if you have any questions on a slide you see in front of you. We can move to the next slide. Just real quick, the agenda will be going through. Most of this is just pretty standard, so we'll just keep moving on. Sorry, next slide. Our missions and goals have been as stated for the last few years now, and they are to ensure a stable and safe network environment. We've been maintaining that level, and it's working out really well for us. So we can move on. I'm trying to speed through these first few ones because it's our organizational chart. We are a team of 10. We have 2 vacancies right now. Our FY25 budget, we added a position for the Deputy IT Director position. We made 2 important hires over fiscal year 23 and 24, which was IT Security Systems Administrator and Second Application Specialists. And as of July 2024, we have 2 vacancies, as I mentioned, the new position that's just been created, as well as Molly Sprouse, who a town employee for 18 years, has just retired. I asked her to be with us, but she's literally already on vacation. So I'd like to thank Molly, to take this moment to thank Molly for her many years of service and for her incredible help with me over this last 8 years. So thank you very much to Molly. We can move on to the next slide. I just want to touch real quick. I know we're on the cusp of fiscal year 24 and 25. So just real quick, our fiscal year 24 budget was laid out by my predecessor, Karen McGonigal. Everything flowed just fine with that. And as mentioned, for fiscal year 25, the Deputy IT Director position was what we had asked for, the funds we had asked for there, as well as our normal increase in professional services. Our capital requests, this year's capital requests are routine annual requests. I will note that the replace town computers will go up next year as we replace COVID era tech. Next slide. Our key projects right now for fiscal 25 and beyond. We're working on the DPW wireless expansion right now. We are putting some wireless antennas out at the DPW facility to cover the range in between the buildings, as more and more of them are using mobile devices to do their work on, and so it lets them do it right from the truck and then move on if they need, as well as covering more of the garage areas for training. Our network security and fail-safes, we've been putting in some redundant switches. We have some work getting done here in September, or excuse me, that we completed by September with a second phased plan for spring 2025. We're also doing some security upgrades, with just basic locking up, making sure that it's harder to get to some of our network infrastructure at remote offices. Virtual server update. We have our virtual server environment we're planning for an upgrade in fiscal year 26. It's nearing the end of its life, so we need to plan for the upgrade to that during fiscal year 26 and 27. Also, the expansion of the Catherine Flanagan Stover Digital Archives. The Town Document Archive is literally this week moving to the cloud completely, so we'll no longer be hosting it on site. I know that as it's grown in popularity and use, we've been having problems maintaining it to stay up. So that's wonderful that people are using it more and more. So we're moving everything to the cloud. By hopefully next week, everything will be running smoothly from that. And we're also planning alongside town administration, the scanning of PLUS documents starting in fiscal year 26. That's going to be a very big project. And lastly, new town phone system. Town needs to transition to a new phone system here soon. We're having more and more remote workers and hybrid workers, and our current phone system, as managed by public safety, we're hopefully going to transition that over to town IT and fully take over the phone system and implement this. This will be for fiscal year 26 and 27 moving forward. Next slide.
Well, before you go.
Oh, excuse me, yes.
I'm not very good at this stuff. What's a virtual server?
Virtual server. Let's see. I saw a meme once. The best way to explain it, right, is think of a truck that's hauling cars, right? You see them there's like 3 cars on the bottom, 3 cars on top, right? Yep. That's a virtual server. It's one big thing hauling a bunch of little things inside of it. So essentially, we've got one large box down, actually we have 2 of them, excuse me, in 2 different locations. And from that, we run, actually, I believe the count now is 27 servers off of those devices. So that's everyday stuff from how we do stuff out at waste, out at DPW, to everything being run over at Council on Aging and the Saltmarsh Center. So all those servers are run out of one device, essentially.
I got you. Makes sense.
Yeah. Move on. Right, cybersecurity.
Excuse me, I'm going to back up a second. When you said COVID-era technology.
Yeah.
Could you explain that? That was a couple slides ago, but.
Excuse me. Yeah. No worries. For COVID-era technology, we had a big increase in laptops and laptop usage over not only 2020, but 2021, 2022. So we're now starting to get to the end of life on some of these older laptops. Now, once they hit 4 years, they unfortunately, as security updates go, are no longer maintainable for us. There's just been an increase, and the cost of laptops and so on have gone up. We are trying to do more consolidation. In other words, fewer devices for people. So for instance, I do everything off my laptop. I just go right into a docking station. Some folks still have 2 machines in some situations, but we're trying to limit that and ratchet that in.
Madam Chair. Mike, is
Yes.
4 years the industry standard for municipal governance to replace its computer equipment?
Well, I usually go off of corporate standards, which is 3 to 5 years. So we aim for the 4-year. Obviously, we don't always replace every single machine. What tends to happen is a 3-year machine may get replaced, but since we still have it under warranty for another year or 2, it may then get used in a different capacity.
I see. So it's it's the warranty cycle, et cetera. Okay,
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes. Anything else on budget? No. Okay. So cybersecurity. Cybersecurity remains a key focus for IT. Our approach to cybersecurity is under basically 3 umbrellas: collaborate, educate, and secure. Jordan, our Information Systems Security Specialist, and I just returned from the Center for Internet Security's Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center annual meeting down in Florida. Sorry, that is a mouthful, but we just call it the CIS MSISAC conference. And where we were able to meet with information security professionals from across the country, as well as those in the federal government, and just kind of get the latest on threats to state, local, and tribal governments. Town IT is maintained on is keen on maintaining relationships with these entities, and as CTO. Internally, we've been working more and more collaborating between town entities, specifically airport, schools, and public safety and town core functions, trying to get us all on the same cybersecurity level. And to that note, for our goal through that is mostly through education. The town has been focused on cybersecurity training for all of our staff, including staff at public safety, schools, and airport. We're coordinating across the county to make sure everyone is receiving the same level of training. Phishing and social engineering remain our largest threat to the network, and it's the most common type of attack. We've heard the complaints from staff and administration, even board members, of constant training and how it may seem a little repetitive and so on. I just want to iterate that that is the point of the training. It's the moment you become lax and comfortable is the moment problems happen. And then lastly, for security, as stated in the slide, Town IT is just continue to expand our cybersecurity suite of software, services, and physical infrastructure to protect our network assets. Next slide. Artificial intelligence. As CTO, I recently helped develop this past May and shared with Cabinet the Generative Artificial Intelligence Guidelines for the town and county of Nantucket. The aim is to provide guidelines for the type of information that is allowable for use with AI, laying out principles as well as implementation and oversight. This is a living document that will likely see many edits over the years to come. Whether we know it or not, we're using AI daily. From autocorrect, online searches, AI is built into nearly everything we use these days. So we're currently exploring the use of AI to assist with stuff like minute taking. Those watching at home right now via Zoom or on YouTube are getting their closed captioning done via AI. So IT is looking at AI tools to assist with cybersecurity workflow management as well, and daily workflow assistance. Yes.
Yeah, I noticed that a month or so ago. It's amazing the minutes that it's doing the
summaries.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, and
Yeah.
it's almost instantaneous.
Yeah,
And
we're still working on the Zoom summaries. Just we want to make sure. So Zoom summaries, I think, is a great thing to bring up, because what we want to make sure is that a human has constant eyes on these summaries, and to make sure they are factually accurate, because we do know that AI is capable of making mistakes. So, but yeah, we're working on those to make those into the pipeline.
It was word for word.
Yeah.
And then I looked it up, and it can translate into like 100 different languages.
Yeah.
Almost instantaneously as well.
Yeah.
And it's incredible how far it has come as quickly as it's come. It's, a couple years ago when they were talking about the Olympics and people were speaking to each other and they didn't even know each other's language, they were speaking through their iPhones and translating. It's even further than that. I can't even imagine. I'm old, so.
Well, one of the things that we want to assure folks within the town is that AI is not in a place where it's here to replace anyone's job. It's simply a tool we can use to better perform our duties, which require careful use and scrutiny. And just a quick note, that image was something that I prompted into DALL-E 4, which is a image generator from OpenAI. Next slide. Town IT faces many of the same challenges that other towns and municipalities can contend with, alongside being 30 miles out at sea. I like to think of everyone on Nantucket as a remote worker. But with these challenges come some opportunities. Nantucket's working closely with CISA, as I mentioned earlier, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security, as well as the MSISAC, and the Massachusetts Commonwealth Fusion Center. Leaning on them for resources and information, while at the same time sharing our own information, insights, and processes. This September, Town IT is also launching a pilot training program for IT staff members in Town IT, Public Safety IT, and Schools IT to help our current staff stay up to date on the latest technology and create a pathway for certifications and other educational opportunities. Move on to the last one. And just in summary, first and foremost, Town IT must prioritize robust security measures to protect sensitive data. With cyber threats on the rise, it's imperative that we implement the best practices and technologies to safeguard our information. Secondly, ensuring uninterrupted delivery of critical services during emergencies is paramount. Our department must be prepared to respond swiftly and effectively to any situation to maintain essential services for our community. Third, smooth integration of IT solutions across various departments is critical. Effective service delivery depends on seamless coordination and communication between our systems and teams. Lastly, we recognize the growing public demand for digital services that are efficient and user-friendly. Despite the unique challenges posed to our island environment, we are committed to meeting these expectations and improving the overall user experience. Thank you for your time this evening. I look forward to working together with the Select Board to achieve these goals. If you have any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, Mike, one thing that I've been asked about a few times is certain technologies to be able to, say, vote from home or do open town meeting.
Right.
And a lot of that is enshrined in state statute.
Correct.
So if you want to briefly comment on like kind of what your constraints are, if you,
Sure.
even if you wanted to.
Sure. Well, so first of all, I mean, town clerk would be the primary source for some of this information or for clarification. They would have that access. Now, that being said, there are some very real limitations. Number one, the cost of running such a thing efficiently would be astronomical. It's already expensive enough to run town meeting with the new technology costs that we add nearly every year. Not sure how much more I can add to it. There's legal ramifications and studies that would have to be done. That again, this would take years before we can actually put it into effect.
Maybe someday.
Maybe some. Look, honestly, I think this would take it would take the state or the federal government to lead the way on it before we could actually fully implement it ourselves. They would have to provide some level of infrastructure, or the election security alone. The conference I just came back from is wild what you hear about. So the election security alone would be an issue. So
got it. Thanks, Mike. And we don't have too many memes in our presentation, so
you're
bonus
welcome.
points.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, great.
Okay. Libby, next up, our island home.
Okay, so I think, is Erica pulling up? Yep, thank you very much. We have a team that's going to be going over this particular presentation. Erica, if you could just go to the next slide, please. So we're going to be going through these items here. I'm going to give you the update, and then other members of our administrative team that's working on this project will handle the rest of the items shown there. A lot has happened since the board was most recently updated on the Our Island Home new facility, which happened in March of this year. As the board knows, and I'm repeating a little bit of this from what we said in March, but just to give the public a refresher on the project, it has a lengthy history. Since 2000, at the 2017 annual town meeting, the town proposed the acquisition of property adjacent to the Sherburne Commons property owned by the town at lease to the Sherburne Commons facility, plus an appropriation for a skilled nursing facility to be constructed there. Those articles at the 2017 annual town meeting were not approved by voters. In 2018, the select board directed town administration to determine what it would take to construct a new island home facility at the current site on East Creek Road. Thereafter, we engaged architects between 2019 and 2021 to undertake that analysis. We held charrettes, stakeholders were interviewed, other properties close to the current site were reviewed, consultation with the Department of Public Health occurred, and analysis of different operating models was conducted. Subsequently, at its meeting on August 18th, 2021, the select board voted to pursue a new Our Island Home facility at the Sherburne Commons site, with the current facility to be repurposed for a senior center and to put forward articles at the 2022 annual town meeting for design of a new Island Home facility. We engaged Brenda Johnson to assist with public outreach and to gather and provide feedback and input for a new facility. And at the 2022 annual town meeting and election, design and associated funds in the amount of $8.5 million was approved. In 2023, we engaged our design architect and owner's project manager. The board also approved the construction manager at risk project delivery method. That approach also requires the approval of the State Inspector General, which was granted in early 2024. Using CMR, construction manager at risk, increases the accuracy of cost estimates because the contracted builder is involved in the budgeting phases along with the design team, which provides a higher level of cost control. Additionally, the construction manager is contracted to deliver the project at a guaranteed maximum price based on an agreed set of construction documents and specifications, which are underway now. In accordance with statutory requirements, we've selected a contractor, Consigli Construction Company, pending the execution of a formal contract with the board, which is, again, pending. The steering committee for the project includes myself, Craig Piper and Richard Webb of SMRT, those are our design architects, John Lemieux of Vertex, John's our OPM, Owner's Project Manager, Bob Eisenstein of Eisenstein Flaherty Associates. Bob's firm is currently contracted by the town to assist with administrative oversight of the facility. Assistant Town Manager Rick Sears, Select Board Member Don Holgate, and Finance Committee Member Peter Schaefer. The advisory committee also, we also have an advisory committee, sorry. That includes the steering committee members, as well as representatives from Sherburne Commons, Nantucket Cottage Hospital, Our Island Home, Friends of Our Island Home, the Nantucket Center for Elder Affairs, and the Senior Center. While it has been established per the board's vote that the new facility will be located at Sherburne Commons, there is a long-term lease between the town and Sherburne for the Sherburne facility on the town's property. That lease is subject to an amendment, and it is the subject of current discussion with the Sherburne Commons Board of Directors. Other members of the team are here to review the project update, and I think we are going to Bob Eisenstein next. Bob?
Thank you very much. Are we able to pull up the slides? Thank you. First of all, thank you, Libby, and thank you, Select Board. I thought before we get into the main presentation, which is the design program element and some cost estimates, it's important to keep in mind what we're really about, which is taking care of the residents and families at Our Island Home. So I just wanted to briefly share some of the positive events that have occurred at the nursing home over the last year. We had our first annual survey from Department of Public Health since before the pandemic. They finally started back on cycle. We had an excellent result. We had 4 minor deficiencies. The state average is about 12. The staff have done a phenomenal job. Life safety survey had 0 deficiencies. Some of the other things that are important to note, we have a full-time therapy contract with a company called Preferred Therapy, and they provide 5-day-a-week therapy now in the facility, which is critical because to get Medicare certification and reimbursement, you need 5-day-a-week therapy. We've also have a new physician that started on staff. Her name is Dr. Anna Espirito, and she lives on Cape Cod, but she's been commuting and spending 2 or 3 days a week in the facility, which is wonderful. She's been bonding with Dr. Kane, our current medical director. We're also going to introduce her to Nantucket Cottage Hospital. So it's providing more hands-on care for the residents, and we were a little stuck at times without having a physician to admit patients. We've also seen, and a lot of this is sort of getting ready for the new building. We've had an increase in the short-term residents who have been admitting, and we've had, I think, up to around 9 or 10 discharges so far this year. And we've done follow-up calls to those residents, and they've all been very, very pleased with the care. Our revenue collections from direct patient care continues to increase year over year. And what we call our quality mix, meaning Medicare and private pay, has also been very strong. So all these are positive indicators, again, leading into sort of getting ready for the new building. The plans for the new building, just today we spent all day, and tomorrow we have a team, I don't know if they're here or not, Aaron and came to our building to discuss the plans with our staff. So we've really been involving everybody in the building. We also had a family member that I saw in the parking lot who was interested in coming in to see the plans. So we talked to her about the plans, very supportive of everything. We have representatives, members of the advisory group, as Libby mentioned, and we are developing marketing initiatives now in advance of again, moving into the new building. We're convinced that the single rooms will provide a much greater opportunity to market and bring more patients into the building. We're also starting a social media campaign. We've got some testimonials that I'm going to talk to whoever did the web program to see if we can get that on the website. We've got some wonderful stuff happening. I invite anybody who's interested to come and tour the building if you want to find out more about our island home. And we just wanted to give you a quick update of what's currently happening. And I'll turn it over to Craig Piper to give the rest of the presentation.
Hi, I'm Craig Piper from SMRT, an architect. One thing I wanted to sort of going back to the early announcements of YouTube videos, back on, excuse me, on March 20th, we did a deeper dive on how did we get to the design and a lot of the programs. So if folks are interested, I would recommend going back to watch that. So we're not going to repeat all the elements that where we are today, but I wanted to remind everyone that's an option. The other piece that Bob mentioned, I'm up here presenting, but I also have Dick Webb, my partner in crime, and Aaron Anderson and Amrata Kirpalani back there as well that are doing a lot of the work on the project. So I'm glad my team is here with me. Just to giving an update of the sort of the development of the exterior, one of the elements that we want it to fit into the community, be representative of the Sherburne neighborhood, be welcoming and friendly, and making Nantucket proud. One of the elements that we didn't have last time was a covered drop-off, and so I wanted to highlight that in this rendering here of showing the ability for residents and families to come to the facility, be undercover if the weather's poor, and have great access. It's also for ambulance, transport, and other functions. Next slide, please. This is a snapshot of the view from South Shore Road. The impact of how it is front-facing off of South Shore Road. The features are, very much in keeping with the community and the scale of the project. Reminder, it is a one-story building. The second floor is all mechanical space. And so we're, the uniqueness of servicing all the residents on one level, the idea is to have a lot of the mechanical equipment on the second floor can be serviced so you don't have to disrupt the care that is being given on the first floor. Next slide. This is an aerial view or a bird's eye perspective that starts to show some of the features that we talked about of having enclosed courtyards. Our current thinking on the courtyards is one is passive and one is more active. And these are courtyards that are inward facing, so the residents can have the ability to go outside without the fear for elopement or wandering off. They can feel like they're outside. And it also provides space for families to go with their loved ones in different areas within the site. Next slide, please. This features some of the I mentioned the covered drop-off, making sure the front door is very clear. If there's a resident and a family member or a friend is visiting, we want it easy and safe for them to come visit. We also are looking at, making sure service and access for deliveries is clear and safe and also screened, very important element. And then, being a good neighbor to Sherburne Commons, we have significant plantings to sort of separate the activity of our island home with the rest of Sherburne Commons. Next slide. So again, back in March, we presented these plans. If you looked at them quickly, you notice that they're very similar, but there's a lot level of further detail in these drawings. We are in the phase that's called design development. Last time we met, we were presenting schematic design. Design development is where we start to really hone in on the uniqueness of every space. And that is, if you look at this room, it's all the components that go in the room. in schematic design, we figured out how big the room is and where it goes. We're in design development, identifying how high the ceilings are, the components, the lights, those sorts of components. That's design development. We're working, and all of this information is more information on the details of the project, which works for our contractor partner, Consigli, to understand the unique components and provide pricing as we go along, as we develop the drawings. One last piece on the design development. We're going to wrap up at the end of August and then go through a pricing exercise, understand, retesting where we are. But then we move into construction document phase, and that's the phase that we really work on coordinating all the drawings so they're easy and a way for the contractor to actually implement the design and the uniqueness of the project. So again, this is the first floor, three wings of 15 beds. The lower left wing is a combination of our dining and kitchen and living room. So if you can see in the packet, if you want to explain or look at these details, they're probably easier to look on the packet on the PDFs. The next floor, our next slide, please, is the basement area, which is really only support. No residents are down here. So this is all some of the laundry. There's a training room for clinical staff to maintain their licensing, and there's maintenance, and we also are building in some shelf space. So there's some space in the basement for the ability to have a little extra space that you never, planning for the future flexibility. Next slide. So some of the features, you can start to see the dining room, for example, for those who have been to our island home. The dining area is in the middle there. It runs north-south. It has windows on the outside as well as to the courtyard. That dining room is approximately the same size as the dining room at the current island home. And it's larger than the current island home, but it's also adjacent to the living room to the right, which is a way to use spaces and maximize the function of the space. So we have the ability to close off between those two rooms if there's an activity going on separate from the dining. Again, flexible spaces, choices. As you can see within that red circle, those are all resident amenities. There's a small private dining room, so family members can come on, say, a celebration, an anniversary with their loved ones in private. We have a den. We have a larger den, a smaller den. Choices for the seniors or the residents to have choices is really the goal there. Next slide, please. We talked a little bit about the courtyards and these connector porches. These are porches that enclose the courtyard, but they also provide a very special place for a resident and a loved one to leave their room to go to an area and be sort of inside, protected, and again, another place for choice. Next slide. Just a little bit of detail on the resident room specifically. These are, we have two types of resident rooms generically. The one on the left is a typical single room, and it has a place for all the components that are required of the room, and then a place for also understanding that everything has a place and understanding that the restroom or the bathroom is connected directly on the same wall where the resident bed is. And that's a real key feature on residents. There's a lot of slips and falls that happen in skilled nursing, and most of them happen on the way to a restroom. So aligning that path directly and easily walkable, potentially, or with a handrail from the bed directly to the toilet. The other component is an overhead lift system, which is helping and assisting staff move a resident. So that overhead lift also can go right from the bed to the resident room. The room on the right is what we're calling the larger room, and this is that future-proof that we talked about of designing double rooms, that if in the future the census or the population changes on the island, the ability to grow the building in its existing footprint to provide flexibility without having to do an addition later. So so day one, it's a single room. Maybe 10, 15 years down the road, if there's a census requirement to go up, we have the ability to increase the room makeup. Next slide. So I'm going to switch from sort of the design side to think about some of the sustainability initiatives on the project. And the items on the top are, how are we making these decisions? So for example, we're balancing first cost with what is the payback from those investments. Again, this is a significant project. It's a much longer lifespan of a building. So we want to make sure we make smart first cost decisions. We want to make sure that all the systems that we put in the building are easily maintained and repair, reduce our energy use, which goes to our bottom line of operating cost, and then understanding any systems that we put in the buildings. As we all know, the systems are becoming more complex, and the energy efficiency, we want to make sure that there's knowledge to maintain and take care of the systems on island. Obviously, the cost of operating, the lifespan of the equipment, and then evaluating. We haven't made any decisions, but are there other avenues which they may or may not make sense for our project, where we, a third party would purchase, for example, a PV array or a geothermal and then lease back the energy. Those are the things that we're in the middle of. Right now, the assumption is we are purchasing as part of the project and budgeting. All of these are in the system. And for example, in this chart, we are planning a geothermal system and a heat pump hot water system to be a fully electric facility. Next slide. So certification, I think we talked a little bit about, there's LEED. You folks have heard of the building. It's a certification for LEED certification. There's well building. We're focused on the passive house plan, and I'll just briefly highlight what a passive house system is. Passive house is a building standard. It's a rigorous, focused on energy efficiency. It's performance-based, and so the idea is that there's energy modeling, testing of our systems to make sure that they follow through, and then there's a whole separate set to make sure it was built to the standards, and which allows for making sure that this passive house certification actually meets the intent. The biggest part of passive house is insulation continuity, which reduces the exterior changes in temperature. The balanced ventilation, so the key there is we're not moving a lot of air. The idea is that we're super insulated. The air we're moving is for ventilation for the residents, but also for a healthcare facility. You want to bring outside air changes. So the idea is that our building is super tight, and we're minimizing the airflow so it doesn't feel drafty, is one thing. The next slide, please. The goals of passive house ultimately is to reduce our energy use and then also provide superior indoor air quality, thermal acoustics. You can imagine a building with a lot of insulation all the way around is a much more, from an acoustic perspective, neighboring traffic on South Shore Road will minimize the acoustics for the residents. Ultimately, energy use and thermal comfort for the residents is the reason we're going passive house. The other piece is the durability of the building. If you can imagine a building that's super insulated, it doesn't expand and contract as much as a home would be, where you have, in the summer, your building gets a little expanded, in the winter it contracts. The idea of a passive house is that it's more consistent throughout the building because the building structure is not exposed to the weather. Simplicity. Next slide. The other component that we're looking at is rebates, energy rebates. And so we're tracking a lot of these incentives through Mass Save programs, and we're not counting on these as savings today because we understand programs change. But right now, if the project moves ahead with the plan that we have, we are eligible for almost $860,000 in rebates. So the investment, those first costs, we offset by some of these savings. Next slide. Just a quick snapshot, sort of graphically. Understanding on the big blue bar on the left is an energy model analysis of the existing R-Island home. And so then if you, I won't even go into the details of the numbers. The scale of it is, on the left is the current R-Island home. The middle would be if we could pursue passive house and geothermal systems, we significantly reduce the energy use, even if it's a much larger facility. And then the last slide, the last column is if we are the ability to introduce solar PVs on the roof as well as passive house and geothermal, we're really minimizing our energy use for the size of the building. And just a snapshot of how much energy cost for a year at the current R-Island home. Oil, propane, and electricity is about $150,000, just as a comparison.
Do you present value that? Do you look at what that savings would be in over 20 years, the life of the equipment?
That's what that's the next step, Matt. We're trying to, we've got our partner that can help with the pricing. We also are working really closely. They have a strong sustainability team to help with those life cycle decisions, and that's kind of our next pass. Next slide. Oh, I guess I'm done. So I'm going to introduce John Lemieux from Vertex.
Good evening, everybody. I'm realizing that with glasses or without, I still can't read anything anymore. So as Libby alluded to, one of the big things that's changed for the project is now we have a construction manager at risk on our team. And I'll introduce Brian Hamilton from Consigli in just a second. As she said, we had petitioned the Inspector General to use CM at risk. That came after this board said, yes, we should pursue that. We submitted the application to the Inspector General. Took about 2 months to hear back. Once we heard back from them in the affirmative, we issued the request for qualifications. We got 3 very talented firms who responded. And then from those 3 firms, to those 3 firms, I should say, we issued a request for proposal. We received 2 proposals back from the firms. We interviewed both of those firms on July 11th. Those proposals we got for them were both a non-price technical proposal, which was basically a pretty in-depth view of how they would proceed with the project, and then a pricing proposal. As the result of the interview, Consigli was chosen as the higher-ranked firm, and a letter of intent was issued to them around June 14th. They immediately jumped in both feet and turned around a schematic design estimate that is the basis of the budget we'll talk about here in a few minutes. They did that and really tried to dig in and understand, and it showed the level of homework they had done with the documentation that they had been given leading up to the interview process. And again, Consigli's the first step with them before they put the price together was to understand the site constraints and how the project was going to be put together. And I'll introduce Brian to kind of take you through just some of the graphs or graphics they put together for that presentation, just to kind of show you the scope of what's to come on the project. Brian?
So I'm Brian Hamilton with Consigli. If we advance it 1 slide. So really with any construction project, it's disruption, right? Everybody acknowledges that. So part of the process of proposing on this, we looked at what was around us, and we came up with an initial plan of how we're going to really work the site. And really just wanted to point out what we were thinking about. We thought about the residents, I'll say on the plan south, residents on plan east, and tried to keep activities to the most extent that we could away from that, push it up into that northwest corner. So that's where our trailers are. That's where we're going to try to do most of our loading and unloading. Doesn't mean there's not going to be some disruption at the south side, but we're going to try to minimize it. If you advance it another one. Okay, so this is I'll say graphically how we're going to go at this job. We're going to start on plan west, put the basement in, and really work that heavy part of the site. We know you've got that sewer there, so we're going to put things in place to make sure we don't disrupt that. Advance it another one. One more slide. Okay, so now the building is starting to come up. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to work plan west to east. Several reasons to do that. The mechanical space is in that southwest corner, and that's something we want to attack early on. So that's really how we're going to go at this. If you go one more slide, I think we've got one more in there. Yeah, then it's finishing up. Again, we're trying to stay planned north to the most extent, most that we can, and leave the south side alone. So that was a pretty quick walkthrough of how we're going to do it. I think I've touched on the highlights. Yeah, so the schedule, it's really, depending on how this all comes together, but just building the building, you're in the 18-month range. And it's going to be dependent on things like the geothermal well. There's a whole bunch of decisions left to be made, but that's roughly an 18-month schedule. In front of that, we've got roughly 6 months to handle the existing homes that are there. And that's a big piece that we're also working through in the next several months. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian. Next slide. I think just to talk briefly about one of the things that I think the committee was impressed with Consigli is that it came to the table offering some, how do we do this more cost effectively? How do we do this more efficiently? And just a couple of the examples, one of their ideas that they've done on other projects was prefabrication, but and obviously the island is very familiar with things that are prefabbed off island and brought in. But this was a great example of taking the 45 restrooms, building them off property, and then bringing them in as kind of pods, with those spaces being essentially complete and just needing to be connected. So we thought that was great forethought. Also some thoughts about exterior panelization. What can we do off island and bring here? To obviously save us both time and money. And then, standardization of other things along the way, so that was the big part of getting this builder on board. It wasn't just for the real-time cost information, it was for that experience of doing this in other places. Next slide. So Craig gets to talk about all the fun stuff, and then I get offered up for the big numbers piece of this. But no, we all knew that this was going to be an expensive project. And if I can ask one more slide, please. How did we approach this? I mean, as we kind of talked about earlier, there had been an initial schematic design estimate that had been done by SMRT's estimator. Consigli was able to get that, look at it, digest it, but then also, dig into the plans themselves as part of preparing for the interview, but then really in depth going into the plans to give us a comparative estimate to be able to put out there as the basis of this budget. Next slide, please. We talked about things like Brian alluded to, schedule, building square foot, kind of square foot costs and taking, materials takeoffs. What are some of the assumptions that were put in place? I think it's really important to put that out there, right? We talked about an 18-month duration. We talked about an additional 6 months to talk about moving housing. As this board well knows, there are discussions going on with Sherburne Commons right now. We've got to move 2 of their existing houses off-site to give us the land to be able to build this. There's also discussions about replacement housing for those workers, which would need to be built in place first before this project could get moving. So a lot of things to kind of, try to figure out as part of the way. And that's why it was really, we thought as a team having a CM was super important to the process. And Consigli has already started, participating in those discussions. So hearing all of this and knowing all of this, they took that info and provided a schematic design estimate. And we'll kind of show you on the next page, kind of the breakdown of the big buckets here for the cost. The project, I know everyone's eyes went right down to the bottom right corner without even looking, but how'd that break out? Cost of the building, that 18-month duration, is that $77.2 million. What else for construction costs do we have to talk about? We have to talk about the relocation of the Sherburne staff housing to off-site somewhere. That is in there right now for about $2 million. Then we have to talk about the new Sherburne staff housing that's on estimate for about 4.2 million. Again, those things aren't entirely ironed out yet, but again, this group told this committee that we would come back to you in July. Again, we feel much more solid about the number now that we've had a chance to dig into it and the design has progressed to where it is. What are the other costs that make up the total project budget? You've got your designer, OPM, and other project costs, other soft costs, all sorts of different design and management items. You've also got furniture, fixtures, and medical equipment, including IT and technology, for about 4.9 million. Again, that's everything that if you picked the building up and shook it, it would fall out of the building. Then contingencies. We need to include contingencies in any project like this. We've got just over 5% on all costs in this budget right now. That's not money earmarked for anyone. That is money that if it is not spent, goes right back to the citizens in Nantucket. That puts us at a total project budget of 104.5 million. If you take away the appropriation that was already voted on, that puts us at just over 96 million. The goal moving forward will be that there will be another test of that construction number at the end of August. And then further along, few months past that, as we prepare for what will ultimately be a bid in hand from Consigli. This project will go out to bid around the turn of the year. We will actually have bids in hand, and we will come to this group with the number for the warrant for town meeting. So, and again, 96 million with about 6 million related to Sherburne Commons staff housing. Next slide. Knowing that the number is a large number, we also asked Consigli, start thinking about some other ways we could possibly save money on the project right out of the gate. So, you know, some of the things they came up with were, and again, ROM is rough order of magnitude. And again, there are a number of things that would require further discussion and study. Some of the things they came up with: move the basement programming up to the second floor, which is largely attic space. That would save between $1 million and $1.4 million. Geothermal wells, instead of doing a higher number of more shallow wells, do a lower number of deeper wells. And what, you know, could that net us, you know, about a couple $100,000 possibly. If you deleted the geothermal system altogether and went with a more traditional heating, that would save you about $2 million. Cold formed metal in lieu of structural steel, that's another idea that Consigli came up with that the design team needs to look at. Removing the accessible attic, really making it, you know, if you kept the basement, why do you need the attic? So let's not put anything up there nor have access to store anything up there. That could possibly save some monies as well. Next slide. Whole host of other items, but as you can see from these items, the first 6 or 7, you know, kind of smaller items. You get to landscaping, you know, reduce target landscaping reductions of 25%. That's $600 with potential savings. You know, don't wire the building for PV, and that would be, you know, again, we're asking for ideas. We're not saying they're all great ideas, but we're getting ideas. Delete the roof well, which is on the flat part of the roof. The result of that is maybe you see a little bit more equipment. One of the ones that, you know, we wanted to ask, but is not a favorite, is if you took 15 beds out of the facility, it's a $5 to $6 million savings. You say, well, wait a minute, if we take away a third of the beds, why aren't we saving a third of the price? Because the beds are the least expensive space, right? The most expensive spaces are all of the common areas and the kitchens and all of those things. You would still have all of those. Yes, they would be maybe slightly smaller. So again, you don't get that third of the cost savings by removing a third of the beds. Then again, that has all sorts of other implications. I'm not even going to look at Bob right now about, you know, losing beds and possibly getting beds back later. Once you know, give them up on your license, they're hard to get back. Basement reduction, you know, instead of having, you know, shelf space down there, just, you know, leave it completely unfinished. And then, you know, some other things about, you know, double doors and, or excuse me, double rooms, you know, do away with those double rooms that Craig talked about, make them all singles. You know, again, nominal pricing, but a lot of potential ideas. Next slide. And just a few more, you know, the access road, one of the items that was on there was the access road leading out of Sherburne Commons the back way. You know, that was in there to get some, you know, some upgrade. Okay, we don't do it, maybe we do it later. And then, you know, don't pursue passive house. You still have an energy efficient building, but you don't get the passive house certification, $300,000 to $600,000 of potential savings. So, I think we just wanted to show, the committee, the board, these potential items. The committee will continue to work and talk about those, as we move forward in the coming weeks. I'm going to turn it back over to Craig.
Great. And again, going back to the charge of, the program with the amenities that we discussed back in March, this is where we are today. And our goal is to continue to work as a team to keep all those amenities, but figure out, can we tighten our belt and figure out how to, bring the cost down. As always, that's one of our charges as a design team in this phase, working to keep all the good, but reduce the cost. That's one of them. So next slide. So again, I mentioned the different phases, and John mentioned we're wrapping up design development at the end of August, which then allows the construction team to begin their estimate. We also have an independent estimator, so they'll both be doing their estimates. We'll have a component where we reconcile between the two estimates. And then the idea is that we would be planning to come back to this group in mid-October to update you on the progress. And then the big next step is where we describe when the project actually, we finish our drawings, it goes out to bid, and then the plan to go to ATM 2025 in May, and then pending the approval, potentially construction start shortly thereafter. So I think that's it.
Malcolm?
Yes, thank you very much. So the total cost is estimated $90–100 million. Have you looked into the long-term operating costs? Or in other words, will we be getting more income versus what will the cost of operating the facility versus present costs now? Because that's a lot of money to spend, but we also have to know what it's going to cost us to maintain it in the future.
Yeah, I can't talk about the revenue side, but the operating costs, as we started to say, we're looking at the efficiency of the energy use and the infrastructure. The other components, a lot of the flooring materials, for example, today require a lot of cleaning materials, a lot of, they're a VCT tile, which requires a wax and a cleaning. A lot of the newer products, rubber flooring, doesn't need that sort of maintenance. So again, the idea is that the number of staff, even though it's a bigger building, the idea is that the staff stays the same, but the opportunity to fill more of the beds to get more revenue to offset some of those operating costs. Let Bob maybe piggyback.
Right, but could I, Madam Chair, just a follow-up? I mean,
Bob,
but you haven't.
Malcolm, I think Bob's going to answer on the revenue side first.
Okay.
I think we don't have an exact number on projections, but what we're looking at is a significant increase. I'm looking at about 1.5 million, give or take, increase in direct patient revenue already from the last 2 years. We're working on some specific numbers. A lot of it has to do with there's a different financial calculation that we use than the town uses. But in general, a lot of it will come down to the marketability and the ability to fill all the beds. If we can do that, we will see a fairly significant increase. When I mentioned earlier, we call it quality mix, which is short-term rehab in single private rooms will be a terrific advantage to attract people who have either Medicare or private pay. We're already seeing that in small numbers, but we expect that to grow exponentially. So I can't put an exact figure on it. We can certainly do that. But the other point is, compared to the increase in labor costs, we don't anticipate a significant increase at all on the expense side related to labor. A lot of this is going to be on, obviously, the construction cost itself. There may have to be a slight increase in some of the nursing staff themselves, but all the other staff might perhaps maybe by one nurse, but relatively speaking, compared to the potential increase in revenue, there'll be a significant change, a significant difference. And we can work that up for you in the future if you'd like to see that.
Okay. Malcolm, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I'd just like to see that, sometime. anticipated operating costs, anticipated revenue, and then a couple scenarios, one where you actually fill the institution, where we fall short. So at some point in the future, we need to see that, just not a general statement that it'll be okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Malcolm. Matt?
Yeah, just along Malcolm's line, I've said this before. Some of this will, some of these things will potentially require negotiation with the unions and changes, if there's changes of work environment. Some of that should be done before, so we have that, certain. And we have trouble staffing now. And so I look at this and I think this is great and we should do it, but we gotta have somewhere to live. And so there's a whole bunch of this that that I think people are gonna have a lot of questions. I think the building is beautiful, and I think it would be great to do. But I think this is a heavy lift. I will tell a story. We were taught when the school came, and they were all done in the plan. It was being built and the plans are done. And I said, geez, they said, well, this is I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but this is a 40-year building, or this is a 60-year building. And I said, well, wait a minute. The building we had that I went to school in is 150 years old. It's still going strong. Why isn't it, a 160-year-old building? How is it a 100-year building? They said, well, you'd have to use stainless steel nails. Well, we didn't use stainless steel nails? Well, no, because those cost more money. So I think, my point for telling that story is we shouldn't be, penny wise, pound foolish. Like, we shouldn't be trying to save a little bit on certain items that are going to cut the life of this building. If we're going to spend, $100 million, let's make sure we use steel nails, for example. And I think that's something for us to think. Build something that's going to be here for our grandkids and our grandkids' if we are that lucky.
Yeah, so. I agree 100%, and I apologize for not raising that. We're kind of in that phase of this is the making the right decisions, but we want to make sure that they trickle through. That if there's no project, the voters don't approve it. We want to balance the smart decision. So we're looking at, as I mentioned, on the energy side and the system side, but that's a spot-on question. That we're durable materials, long-lasting materials, and this passive house, again, the idea of having your building not expand and contract as much as older buildings do will be a huge benefit long-term.
Dawn?
I just wanted to follow up on that a little bit, that I think that we've put a lot of thought in the committee into some of those ideas, not just life of the building, but things like putting in a basement and doing things so that we haven't outgrown the building the second it's built, making it last, having the ability to potentially make some rooms doubles in the future, not building everything to minimum standards, not building and thinking ahead for energy efficiency and long-term costs. So it's been a very, very significant process going through all of these meetings with this team.
I just wanted to express my gratitude to the team of consultants that we have, to Dawn, to town administration and town members who are volunteering their time to participate in this process. It's exhaustive and extensive, and I appreciate the details and the thought that is going into this, and the level of communication we've had from you all in the design process. So thank you.
Great.
All right. We're good. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Libby, did you want to say anything?
Just thank you for everybody. We have put quite a lot of time into this, and we have spent a lot of time looking at a lot of the things that were mentioned here. We have prior studies going to the point of long-term operational costs, which analyzed current costs and the various operational models that were considered in prior years. And I think the bottom line is that the operational costs going forward are not expected to be any more significant than what they are now, but I certainly understand Malcolm's desire and request to see some numbers. We can certainly work on updating the numbers from those studies, and that's probably something that people are going to want to see anyway. So Malcolm, thank you for bringing that up.
Great, thanks, Libby. Great. Moving on to our next agenda item, under Select Board reports and comments. I wanted to give the community a little bit of an update on what we've been working on with regard to Article 36 at annual town meeting, which was a non-binding appropriation for an independent African meeting house vandalism investigation, is the way it was described. And what we have done is worked with town council, who's here tonight to answer questions, to develop a scope of work that would review the process of the investigation, et cetera. We're still working on the detailed language of that scope of work, and then the intention is to bring in an outside consultant to perform that scope of work to present to the community. It's a review and investigation of how the department handled it, what actually could and couldn't be done, et cetera, through that process, and really do an extensive review of what happened throughout that investigation. So that is once we get that scope developed, we will get proposals from a couple of independent investigator groups, and then we will select one to begin that review process. And Chief Casper's been working with us on that along with town council. So that's really all we have tonight. I don't have the details of that yet. It will be coming soon. It's still in development. So the scope is being finalized. So I know there were a couple people from the community who wanted to speak. So Gail, if you want to go ahead.
Hi, I'm Gail Holgate, and Article 36 was my article for the town meeting, and I saw all of this at 4 o'clock this afternoon. I didn't know anything was going on. No one's ever said anything to me or asked me if I wanted to have input or output of this article. So I'm just going to say that my name is on it, but I did not write this paper. And yes, it is my article. And yes, I did talk to Sarah Alger the day of town meeting, and it was $60,000. That was the number that I gave her that I thought that we might need to get an investigative team going. We do have people, and I'm asking to be a part of the conversation. If there are meetings going on about my article, I would like to know about it and be a part. How's that sound?
I hear you. I hear you. And if, John, could you perhaps explain how follow up to a citizen's warrant article that's non-binding, what typically happens? I'm asking town council.
Well, I think the town meeting vote, Madam Chair, was to pursue an investigation and most importantly, to appropriate, I believe it was from free cash, the $60,000, which of course needs some funding in order to hire an investigator to conduct the study. I think the intention here is to develop that scope of work as part of the public process, to be discussed and adopted by the select board at a future meeting. And so certainly anyone who's interested in having comments, to comment on the scope of work, there will be ample opportunity to do that as the scope of work is finalized. While I do certainly understand what the previous speaker is saying, the fact of the matter is that once an article is on the floor of town meeting, it becomes town meeting's article. And town meeting obviously voted to pursue an investigation within the four corners of the motion that was made. And as I said, I believe it's the intention of the select board to develop that scope with publicly with full input from any voter or interested citizen, not just the petitioner. But the petitioner will certainly have that opportunity to weigh in on the scope.
Right. Excuse me. Yes, and you and I were supposed to have a meeting, and that meeting never happened. You were going to explain some things to me.
Gail,
So,
if you would speak through me to Mr. Giorgio,
Sure.
please, just as a matter of protocol. Thank you.
okay,
Yeah.
so do you want me to say he was supposed to meet with me and we did not meet?
So yes, and I'm not sure what happened there, but we will follow up. I don't want to
Okay,
adjudicate it in public tonight, but we will definitely follow up with you. And so the process will be that whatever the scope of work is, once it's finalized, will return on a public agenda for discussion by the board before it's adopted and moved into procurement. So this was just intended to be an update on that this is in process.
okay, so
So-
I'll be a part of it, or hear a part of it.
We'll follow up with you and let you know how you can be a part of it.
Okay.
How's that?
Thank you.
Okay, and anyone
Thanks.
else for that matter, yeah.
Thank you.
Matt?
And I think, so it'll be, what is the scope? And I think the key issue, and this is, sort of when we get to this, not for tonight, but who manages the investigation, who manages the input in the process? I mean, that'll be part of the scope, but I think that's
Right.
going to be what people are going to be asking. And
Yes.
so, I think that having public involvement in the scope, but also possibly public involvement in the process could give this process the legitimacy it needs to have the community embrace it. So I just, that's my own sort of take on this. So I think we would be smart to embrace the public in some manner if, in the things that we're allowed to have them embraced in.
Okay, yeah. Anyone else? Okay, thank you,
Okay.
Gail.
Thank you.
Yep. Oh, you can come right up to the mic. And just a reminder to state your name for the record. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Barbara Burgo. I reside in Brewster. I am the former chair of the Barnstable County Human Rights Commission. And today I came to hear what might be happening with this article because I've been following it for quite some time. It is a very obviously serious and long matter that's been going on for years. I asked at Town Hall today if I could get a copy of the article. And this was my concern. I was given a letter from Laura, is it Ramo? To Erica Mooney, and the subject says Article ART period 36, and the date was Friday, July 5th, 2024 at 10:18:53 a.m. And this is, what they gave me was Article 36, it says. Okay, so I thought it was done. In parentheses, Appropriation African Meeting House Investigation. And the third line states, Gail Holdgate motion. And so Mr. Barrows brought me to Gail Holdgate's house because it actually states that her motion said, I move that the town vote to direct the select board to undertake an investigation into the hate crime at the historic African Meeting House committed in 2018. Moreover, to review the investigation conducted by Town Administration, the Select Board, Nantucket Police Department, Cape and Islands DA, and the Attorney General's Office, and further to transfer, in large print you can see, transfer from free cash the sum of $60,000 for this purpose. And this is what was handed to me at 3:15 today. So I hear you saying now that this was still under discussion with council, but I was looking for the actual article. When I spoke to Gail, she mentioned that the move to the town to direct the select board to undertake an investigation was not quite the way it was stated initially. So to me, it sounded like the select board is going to do the investigation and transfer $60,000 of free cash. So I was wondering if this letter had exactly to do with what was going on so far that the town hasn't heard anything about.
Sorry, Erica Mooney. So I had called Ms. Holgate on Thursday or Friday to let her know that this agenda item was, I think it was Friday, on the agenda. And in the packet, I included the original Article 36. This was the packet that was posted on Friday. And it shows the original language of the article, but the Finance Committee motion moved not to adopt this article, or the article. I then contacted the town clerk's office to ask for a copy of what the motion was, because it had a negative recommendation. In order for it to move forward, it needed a positive motion. So this was the motion that was put forth on the floor of town meeting that was voted on.
Right. So just to explain town meeting process.
And all of this was in the packet since Friday.
To clarify town meeting process, a citizen warrant puts forward an article. The finance board, in this case, issues a motion. That motion was to not adopt. Then the proponent has the option to call the article at town meeting and present an alternative motion to the Finance Committee's motion. And that's what you just read, was the alternative motion, and that's what was voted on at town meeting. To also clarify, that's a non-binding article. In other words, it doesn't require us to legally require us or bind the select board to take action based on that motion. However, we are taking action, and this will be funded from, the investigation will be funded from free cash. And that is a technical transfer within finance from free cash to make it available to pay for this.
So, thank you, and just a little bit of clarification.
Sure.
I was an elected official in Brewster. I was a housing authority commissioner, so I've been to many town meetings and such. But if it says that it was not adopted and non-binding, but you are taking action, was there a follow-up that says somewhere that even the non-binding negative was finally approved? Because I thought it was a certain number, 100 and something to 200 and something to approve or disapprove.
So we took what was a non-binding action and are taking action. Even though we weren't obligated by the vote at town meeting to do so, the board is choosing to move forward with an investigation. Does that answer your question?
It does, but what I'm wondering is, where is that on paper? And have
Well, it's not on paper anywhere. It's the action we're taking that shows that we're doing it, I think.
I think I can answer that. So the Ms. Holgate's motion received a positive vote at town meeting. So I just want to clarify that. This was an informal, usually when we get it from the town clerk is a very formal vote of town meeting. The town clerk had been out, so she wasn't available to do that, and that formal vote usually says what exactly the vote is. This was supposed to be just a placeholder in the packet, so we knew what town meeting voted on.
Okay.
Town meeting the town clerk's office has that vote. I also have it in my notes at my office. I'm happy to send it to Gail or call Gail, because I have her contact information, so you know what the vote was, if that's what you're
That would be
questioning.
great. That's what I thought I was looking for.
But eventually, the town clerk's office develops a vote for every article for town meeting. It's just been really busy.
Yeah.
With all the things that their office does, so they just hadn't done it yet.
Yep. Okay.
And that's why it's just the email.
So just to clarify, this will come back when we have a draft scope for review by the select board and for public comment. This will come back on our agenda, and I will make sure that the thing you're asking for with the actual vote will be included in the packet at that time, so it will be a matter of public record. I think that's what you're asking, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you. That's exactly
Now I
what
understand
I'm
your
asking
question.
for.
I
Yes,
think I
yes.
wasn't understanding you.
It seemed very nebulous to me as well, and I'm sure it would be to your constituents.
Totally get it now. Yep.
Thank you. And
Okay.
the other thing would be that, it is said by many greats, justice delayed is justice denied. There says nothing about a begin date or an end date. This incident has been going on, as we know, for over 5 years. I'm wondering if you have a sense as to when your deliberations will be commencing for this, if they have not already commenced, and are you setting a timeline for this investigation to begin and end?
To answer your question, as chair of the board, this is a priority for me. We're working on it. And we will get this on the next possible agenda for adoption. And within that should be a proposed timeline for procurement of a vendor to do the investigation. So a timeline will be included in that, an ideal timeline, or we will certainly report back if the timeline we propose is not adequate based on the response we get from the investigators that they will need a different timeline. We will keep the public informed about how this is going regularly.
Regularly. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Sure thing.
Madam Chair?
Sure.
I just wanted to quickly comment that on the town's website, if you go to town meetings and 2024 annual town meeting, that listed there is the 2024 annual town meeting summary. And it's not the same thing as the certified article from the clerk, but under there it does say Article 36 with the vote and all the articles that either passed or did not pass. So just so you know, that is listed somewhere on the website for the official town meeting vote right now.
Thank you. I've been watching your select board meetings for a good long time, for part of the last 5.5 years. And I always see great summaries, good information here, and I love that it's televised like this, which is what we do as well. But I hadn't looked for this one because I did not see the agenda summarized. So what I went to town hall for today was to see if I could get that information. And when I got this memo, I was very concerned. Again, if you see what the memo says, that Gail herself motioned that I move that the town vote to direct the select board to undertake an investigation. It didn't sound like what was reported to me.
That's just how the motions are drafted.
So we'll make sure all of the details are included in the packet when this comes back on the agenda.
Thank you, and I will look up the agenda for the last meeting. I didn't know the exact dates, but I will certainly look that up. And I have been watching only because this issue affects everyone.
Yes.
I thank you for taking it seriously and
Absolutely.
expeditiously as possible.
Thank you for your comments.
And thank you.
Sure, yeah. Okay, any other committee reports from the select board? Any other updates, Malcolm?
I was going to comment earlier, I'll just comment now. The one thing I heard during the 4th of July week from, 4 or 5 different people, businesses, families, was just the traffic and the backups and what it was taking. I lost an account because it took them 45, 50 minutes to get from their business to our place and another 45 or 50 to get back. And they just said, it's not worth it. I'm going to order it through Cisco and et cetera. There were landscapers and builders that were calling me, sending their crews out at 5:30 to try to beat the traffic. They still couldn't beat it. I think it's it was the biggest complaint, and that's a warm-up for August. And I think that it's the projections we had, 30 years ago that everyone said were not possible and it wouldn't happen are here, and they're even worse, I think, than predicted. I think we had the max at 25,000 cars, we're at over 30, and I think it's, I don't know what we're going to do, but it is severely impacting people's quality of life. It's severely impacting businesses, and it's something that we really need to address through the planning processes, through our board, looking toward the future, because we can't keep adding 500 cars a year, and it's a math equation in my head, and I just don't think we can keep adding that every year and expecting it's going to get better. That a few roundabouts and a few curves and turning a little quicker is going to do it. So anyway, it's a warm up. We're in that little nice phase after the 4th where we get a couple of weeks where we can actually move around again. But I think it was, everyone always complains about it, but these are people who have never complained and have always told me, oh yeah, Matt, you're crazy, it's nothing. And they were, they were pretty upset and just didn't know what to do. So anyway, thank you.
Malcolm, did you want to, you unmuted?
Oh, nothing, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, motion to adjourn
So moved.
Second.
by roll call. Matt?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Malcolm?
All right.
The chair votes aye. Have a nice evening, everyone.